Okay, folks, welcome to Market Wrap for the 13th. Let's kick things off with the tips. The tips have been our measure of inflationary pressures on the economy. We are at multi-year highs, I believe all-time highs. Yep, all-time highs. And today we closed down, but the trend is still clearly up. Down volume is very light. So I'm using this chart to gauge our purchases of gold, or the gold miners, silver, etc., because traditionally the tips and gold trade in tandem. But that correlation is not currently working. But the play here, if you're wondering why I talk about the tips every night, is to identify when they may trade back in tandem yet again. And to show you what I mean here are the tips on a monthly chart, and we have gold overlaid, of course, in gold. We're at all-time highs on the tips, breaking out of a very sound base, where gold is building a base. And you can see, going back from 2004 through to 2012, when gold ultimately broke along with the tips, the two traded pretty much in lockstep. And you can see that gold is putting in higher lows, but no higher highs yet. And it's building a very similar base as to what we saw with the tips. But now what we're waiting for is that breakout. So this is why we're building a position in the gold miners. This is not a short-term swing trade. This is a long-term macro play. So I need to ignore the day-to-day volatility in the gold miners because the macro picture is telling me that we're right. But we are early, and early, if you get too heavy with any one position relative to the size of your overall portfolio, can be the equivalent of being wrong. So build in increments, build on strength. Moving on. The dollar rallied today, sold off the highs of the day, probably the lightest volume day of the year. And it is. Today we had the lightest volume day of the year on the dollar bull ETF. The volatility index, weekly view, thus far this week with one trading day left to go, a bearish key reversal. The Dow transports, here's where things get really interesting. We rallied today, but we sold off the highs of the day and closed down below 10,600. So the question that we need to ask ourselves, is this the third lower low for the Dow transports? We're not sure yet. But what we can do is extrapolate out our resistance levels, which may not be support levels in the case of RSI, to identify where there is a high probability of sellers. And we have another 100 points to go on the Dow transports. So if you're looking to short the transports, stay small and wait for the 10,700 level. The Dow Jones Industrial Average. So we popped higher today. We didn't hit resistance. So we may get another push up here to tap resistance, possibly intraday rally through it and then sell off. You don't want to see on a counter trend rally a selling of the market in the final hour of trade. This is why I always wait until late in the day to open up or add to a position. I want to see how we're going to close. And were we to have appeared poised to close at the highs of the day, I would never have thought about opening a short position today. So I decided to speculate a bit because of the price action that we're seeing. And our short was, of course, on the S&P 500, which did in fact hit a resistance level, and we are very close to the upper band of the declining downtrend line. As for the IWM, another one which could probably be shorted right now using the TZA, I think that we're probably going to roll over here. We rallied up into the 156 level, and then we sold off and sold off hard. Take a look at let's go with a 15-minute chart. 1130 was the high, and then for the remainder of the day, we sold off with a blip of a rally in the final 15 minutes. So not necessarily the price action you want to see. The technology sector rallied right up and into the upper band of resistance. And if you take a look at names like Google or Alphabet, they sold off as well. Closing up on the day, a good day, 1.17%. Can't sneeze at that. But we are seeing sellers move in at resistance, and you have your moving averages. The 20-period moving average is poised to break down below the 50-day moving average. That's not the way you want to see your moving averages behave, not if you're getting long anyway. So I'm not predicting that we break down tomorrow, but I think that we are probably going to roll over here in the coming days. NUGT pulled back today. We held the 1450 level, and that's a really, really good sign. Let's bring up the annotated version here. All right, because remember, this was resistance, and today we retested it. It acted as support. So a down day, but actually a bullish day. Volume was light. Could live with that. As for silver, we had broken out the other day. No follow through to the upside, and we broke down below support. And it looks as though we're going to retest the support level yet again. So silver really weak on big volume. It was down today. So I'm not loving this chart. Now the SPXS we bought. We went over the chart of the S&P 500. It's being redundant going over this chart. The play here is that we are finding a bottom on the SPXS and finding a top on the S&P 500. I want to stay small until we begin to break out on the SPXS and, of course, break down on the S&P 500. STOR, outside reversal day, a bullish key reversal up nearly a half percentage point on the day. It appears as though we want to press higher here, so we're going to remain long. If this market holds up, we'll look to add to our long position, especially now that we are hedged to the short side, which makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with adding to longs that are behaving well anyway. Longs that are not behaving the best are names like LABU, where we rallied today nearly 4%, which is great. However, we sold off the highs of the day. So my guess is that we pull back and do a retest here of 44.55. What I want to do is I want to raise stops now, because if we close back down below 44.55, that's a breakout point failure. And there's a probability that we resume the downtrend, and that's no bueno. All right, so we'll see how we close out the day tomorrow. We'll give it a little bit of room. We'll hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And that is it for tonight, folks. Everybody have a great night, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Be well.